Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or if it's your first time here, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene. I talk about eating disorders, my own recovery story, and everything that is related to healing the relationship with your own body, with movement, and of course with food. And if you know me already, you know what's gonna come. Let's dive right into the topic. And today I want to talk about OCD, which stands for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, and the relationship between OCD and eating disorders. Because in fact, a lot of people who have an eating disorder also struggle with OCD, and we want to talk about why that is and also how to handle this, because oftentimes if you try to start recovery from one of those both diseases, the other one gets louder. So in the end of this video, we're definitely going to talk about this, but before we're going to talk about this, I want to read out some statistics to you because it's quite interesting to me. I also want to make you aware we're talking about diagnosed people here, and statistics always just, wrap up like a certain amount of people. From my personal experience, I actually think the numbers are higher because I work with a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, and nearly everyone I know who has an eating disorder has at least some kind of OCD-ish behaviors. But the numbers that I found were that 11 to 20% with OCDs also have an eating disorder, and in fact like 20 to 40% of the people who have an eating disorder also struggle with OCD-ish behaviors. Why is that? So one hypothesis is the genetical hypothesis. If you watched my older videos, you know that I made a video about the eating disorder gene. In fact, there is a gene that could explain why some people develop an eating disorder, why other people don't develop an eating disorder, even if they are in the same environment. So there was some twin studies to evaluate this, and studies have shown that people with OCD have the same genetical predispositions as people with eating disorders. So there might be some genetical predisposition that can lead to both of those disorders. When we look at the brain scans that were taken from people with eating disorders, with people with OCDs, and then from people who suffer from both, we actually see a very tight correlation. So I have my little brain here to show you. Please, I know it's not gonna be like super precise, but over here, if we would like cut our brain open and like look right in the middle, we have the amygdala. It kind of has the shape of an almond. So in German, it's actually also called the almond core. The amygdala is like hyperactive in people with eating disorders as well as in people with OCDs. And the hyperactivation actually also leads to anxiety, which explains why a lot of people with OCD and with eating disorders have a lot of anxiety about or around their habits and their thoughts as well. Something that is also very interesting, but probably not surprising to you if you struggle with one of those diseases, is that a lot of people who struggle with eating disorders or with OCD actually also struggle with perfectionism. And I know that from myself, like I wasn't born as a perfectionist, but I became a perfectionist later in life. And I actually know that the more perfectionistic I became, the more my eating disorder developed, and over time also my OCD-ish behaviors developed. I wasn't diagnosed with OCD until a couple of years ago. In fact, I actually got my eating disorder diagnosis way earlier, and I didn't even talk about my habits and my behaviors because first of all, I was really ashamed of them, and second of all, I just assumed that it's normal for somebody with an eating disorder to have those behaviors. And it probably is, but those behaviors were still like very OCD-ish. During my research and years of trying to understand my own eating disorder and also like my own trauma, I actually learned a lot about our nervous system and a lot about like our dysregulated nervous system, because the reason why sometimes talk therapy doesn't work anymore, because you talked about everything and you still get triggered and you still struggle with things, is that your nervous system is very dysregulated. If you have a dysregulated nervous system, the good news is there are things to do, there are things to work on, but you really have to put in the work. If you're interested in that topic, I'm very happy to make a video about this as well, but it's kind of another topic. I just want to mention it here because nearly everyone with an eating disorder or with OCD has a very dysregulated nervous system, which can also be the link of those two disorders. And if you have a dysregulated nervous system already, which often comes from trauma, chances are that your reward system works very different, which is why a lot of people with trauma and with dysregulated nervous systems are like very prone to have some kind of addiction, such as eating disorders, are also addiction because your reward system works different. So if you have OCD and you do a certain habit over and over again, it can be a very short moment for your reward system where it blinks up and you feel good for a second until you have to do the habit over again. OCD has definitely an impact on how an eating disorder manifests, because if you suffer from OCD, chances are that your habits and your routines are even way more strict than they would already be. So I remember when I was in the depth of my eating disorders, I had very strict rules for myself, which is very common for eating disorders, which is why it is sometimes so hard to different and like to be like, is it eating disorder or is it OCD? But sometimes you don't even have to make a difference, because the thing is, you have to work on your habits regardless. So if it's OCD or if it's an eating disorder, if it's a compulsive behavior or if it's a very strict routine that like keeps you from living your life freely and intuitively, it is a problem, and so you deserve help. I'm gonna give you some examples how OCD can manifest in people with eating disorders. As always, I'm not gonna name any numbers. I'm trying to not make this triggering for anyone, but I'm pretty sure a lot of you will actually recognize some of those things I'm about to say. So for instance, a lot of people need to use the same silverware and the same dishes over and over again. For me, I could never use big dishes. I always had like small plates, small bowls, and I always had like the same kinds of food and the same kind of dishes. If something would be changed because I had guests over or so, I kind of could handle it, but it would make me feel very uncomfortable. Another thing, of course, is like calorie counting, step counting, or obsessively like weighing yourself, writing down any numbers, whatever kind of numbers it is, which is also like very obsessive behaviors. For many people, actually, their scarcity mindset gets activated because they are malnourished. So even if you don't feed yourself enough, your body and your brain can differentiate between if it's an actual famine that's going on, or am I just not getting enough food because I'm the person who's not giving my body enough food. So for your brain, it's actually famine. Your brain thinks there's a famine going on, there's not enough food, so your scarcity mindset blinks up, which is why many people actually have the urge to like save calories until the end of the day, which is why many people try to eat as much food as possible for as little calories as possible. And the scarcity mindset also can go over, for instance, to money. So I know a lot of people who struggle a lot with spending money, especially spending money for themselves. For me, it was like so obsessive that I would walk 2 more miles to save 10 cents. I could never ever spend money for myself. The only time I could spend money for myself was actually traveling, which I'm really grateful for. But I had a very hard time to get like clothes for myself, to buy anything for myself. In fact, it was easier for me to like spend money for someone else than for myself. Many people with eating disorders also start to develop the urge to clean all the time, which also happened to me. I remember when my eating disorder developed, I was still in a relationship, and I would get so mad at my boyfriend for not cleaning the bathroom after he had showered, for not making the bed, or for laying on the bed that I had just made. Nowadays, I'm honestly super chill about this. Like, I'm still a clean person, but if I don't have the time or if it's just not convenient right now, I don't have any problems to like wait a couple of hours until I can clean something up. That was very different for me when I was in the depths of my eating disorder. So these are just like a few examples on how OCD can manifest in eating disorders. Of course, there are way more, and if you want to share your own experiences, feel free to do so in the comments. So the most important question is, how do we work on this? How can I get rid of my eating disorder and of my OCD? How can I actually handle the discomfort that comes with working against my thoughts? Because that's in the end what it is. So, as you know, if you watch my videos about my own story, I went all in 2022, and I just was so done with my eating disorder. And of course, it was not that easy. It was not that I was just done and then I did recovery and then everything was fine. Again, I did some videos about that as well. The good thing is, you can work on both. You can work on your OCD and you can work on your eating disorder, and you can also work on both parallel. In fact, for me in my recovery, when I started to recover, my OCD-ish behaviors actually disappeared like over time. Of course, they didn't disappear from now to then, and I still am a very clean person. I still am a money conscious person, which is not the worst, right? But I don't have any problems with those OCD-ish behaviors anymore. So when I worked on my eating disorder, the rest actually solved itself, because we're working with the same brain areas. We're working with neural rewiring, which means doing the uncomfortable but right and healthy thing over and over and over again. If you have severe OCD, I would suggest that you talk to your doctor about it. There's also medications for OCD, so if you feel like you need more help, please feel free to talk to a professional. You never have to go through recovery on yourself, but I also know that some behaviors can actually solve themselves when you work on your eating behaviors. And I just mentioned neural rewiring, which also has to do with our little brain, of course, because the more we practice something that, as I said before, feels wrong but is the right thing. So for instance, the more we rest, the more we eat, the more we eat without counting calories, all those kind of things, and all the other habits you want to get rid of, the more neural pathways will be created, and over time it will feel natural and you won't have the urge to do those old behaviors anymore. It's kind of similar with OCD, but since OCD can also lead to a lot of anxiety, I really want to make sure that you talk to somebody if you feel that's the way. Because for some people, just as in eating disorders, the anxiety will become worse before it gets better. Like when I first started recovery, I would have so much anxiety about the food I ate, about the steps I didn't take, about my rest, about the body I lived in. And then also, of course, about certain things that had been said to me by doctors, because as we all know, some doctors just don't know anything about eating disorders and they won't find the right words. So there's a lot of anxiety going on, which is the reason why I watched so many of these videos I'm not making, because I always needed reassurance that what I was doing is right. Can I really eat so much? Can I really rest so much? Is it normal to feel that way? When will it go away? I can tell you right now, yes, it is normal. Yes, you can eat so much. Yes, you can rest so much. But again, I know the feeling of anxiety that comes up with those things, and the same goes with OCD. At the end of this video, I want to make sure that, of course, OCD and eating disorders are not the same disorders, but as with many other things as well, they can go hand in hand. So if you feel like your compulsive behaviors and your struggles with compulsive behaviors became worse when you developed your eating disorder, that can definitely be the case, which doesn't mean that you will have a harder time recovering. In fact, you might not have to work on all of those behaviors, and some of them might resolve themselves. But yeah, at this point, I just want to point out, of course, it's two different disorders that can go hand in hand. Your disorder is just as valid if you don't have OCD. So if you feel like, oh, I'm watching this and I can't relate, but I have an eating disorder, of course, it's just as valid. You know me, I'm always saying, if you struggle with it and if it has some kind of impact on your thoughts or on your day-to-day life, you're valid enough and you deserve help, and you are valid and able of healing. Because so many times we tell ourselves, I will not heal, I've been through so much, or I've had my eating disorder for so long, or I've tried so many things. And I get it, I get the frustration, I get that feeling of I will never heal, but I promise you that you can heal as well. So let me know how you felt about this video. If you want to know more about our nervous system, if you have any other questions, as always, leave your comments. It makes me very happy to see that my videos are helping you. I'm thankful for everyone who's made it that far in this video, and I will see you in the next one.